Welcome to Perspectives, Fasken's legal voices on business. Hello everyone, my name is Daphne Willem. I am a partner in Fasken's Labour and Employment Practice Group in Johannesburg. Today I'm joined by my fellow partner, Owethu Mbambo.
Hi everyone, Daphne. I'm looking forward to chatting about this interesting topic that we have lined up for the recording.
I'm also looking forward to it. Today's discussion is influenced by February being the month of love. We will be chatting about how employers, specifically HR practitioners, can handle romantic relationships in the workplace. Owethu, I know that this topic is not the usual top of agenda HR topic, but it isn't something that employers should sweep under the carpet given the potential risks that such relationships can expose an employer to.
Yes, I agree with that, Daph. This topic is also important since many employees are going back to the office more, and there's a shift back to working in the office, to hybrid work arrangements over remote work arrangements. So employees are once again engaging more in person.
There are a few scenarios that I can think of where a romantic relationship in a workplace can potentially be risky for an organization. For example, where a superior is in a relationship with a subordinate who is in his or her department. Are there any other scenarios that you can think of? And what are the potential risks of having these romantic relationships in the workplace?
So, Daph, another scenario that I can think of could be a romantic relationship between managers who are at the same level but in different departments, who are involved in significant decision-making where conflicts of interest may arise. These type of relationships in a workplace put a spotlight on potential biases, on favoritism, on victimization, and a potential disruption to workplace operations. But before we touch on the potential legal risk, I think it is important for us to look at what the laws and the rules actually say about this. I mean, when people think about romantic relationships in the workplace, they usually have questions like, can you have a relationship in the workplace? Is there a law that prevents people from having relationships romantically in the workplace? Do I have to declare it? Those are the sort of questions that generally come up with this topic.
Those are very good questions, and to answer them, one, there are no laws prohibiting romantic relationships in the workplace. Generally, there is also no obligation on employees to disclose their relationships with their fellow colleagues to their employer. Employers may, however, implement workplace rules that prohibit workplace relationships or that require employees to disclose their romantic relationships to the employer. Even if an employer does not have a rule regarding the disclosure of such romantic relationships, there are certain instances where an employer may expect employees to disclose their relationships. You have already touched on the most important instance, and it is where any of the employees are in positions of power and they exercise such power, or the exercise rather of the power, will affect their partner. For example, during a recruitment exercise where the hiring manager is in a romantic relationship with a prospective employee, or where the determination of any discretionary benefits to employees will affect the partner of the person making the decision. In these circumstances, a conflict of interest arises, or it has the potential of arising, and it can be avoided by disclosing romantic relationships and not participating in the activities that give rise to the conflict.
You highlight some really good points, Daph. And I want to add to this discussion that there are risks that arise for employers. And the one obvious risk of workplace relationships, if you look at the case law, is the increased risk of sexual harassment cases arising from people trying their luck by making advances on colleagues. Or even worse, a workplace romance going sour, which would thus blur the lines of the unwelcome conduct when those relationships have terminated. In this case, employers are required by the Employment Equity Act to prevent and eliminate harassment in the workplace. The Code of Good Practice on the Prevention and Elimination of Harassment in the Workplace was released last year in 2022, and it emphasizes the duties of employers in this regard. This code of practice should be an important agenda item for HR teams going into 2023 because employers can be held liable for very hefty fines if they don't manage harassment cases in the workplace appropriately.
So, what do you think is the most appropriate way to deal with romantic relationships in the workplace?
So, Daph, I'm going to give you the most lawyery answer because that really is the correct answer. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to handling workplace relationships. Employers must consider their workplace culture, their demographics, and the risks to determine what measures are appropriate to put in that specific workplace. This can range from having very detailed guidelines and policies requiring disclosure generally or in possible conflict of interest situations. But sometimes it just may be appropriate for an employer to reserve the right to intervene in workplace romances under certain circumstances that may affect operations. So it's important for each workplace to be assessed and to be considered based on the rules and the culture that apply in that workplace, Daph.
That's very helpful, Owethu. I think employers should implement those guidelines. I have enjoyed chatting with you today on this topic, and to summarize, I think we both agree that romantic relationships can and have formed in various workplaces, and it is important for employers to consider how to manage them. HR teams should also be thinking about what kind of training they can be putting in place to educate their employees about the impact that the relationships have on workplaces, operations, and most importantly, the workplace morale.
Thanks, Daph. It's definitely been great having this topic with you. It's not the easiest topic to navigate, but definitely it is something that organizations should consider and have the appropriate measures in place so they are equipped to manage the risks that can arise from these relationships. Because if they are managed properly, they can work and you can have some weddings in the workplace.
And with that, I'd like to wish all of our listeners a happy Valentine's Day.
Indeed. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone.